So today, dear friends, we will be doing something different. Kirsten, for many months now, have been working on a chapter of the book by Joanna De Angelis, and unfortunately, she's not going to be here with us today. But we will be streaming a very interesting talk that she gave it, I believe, about I think it was 2017, entitled "Gratitude: Path to Mindfulness and Better Living." And the chapter that she will be sharing with us, she will be sharing with us next month. The talk is about 45 minutes. We would like to invite everyone to share your questions, your comments with us so that we can go ahead and discuss at the end. We'll be presenting the questions and comments. And if we cannot answer, guess what? I'll hold on to the information so I can share with Kirsten as well, and she can actually answer the
A round
questions
of
that I may
applause.
not be able to answer. So, with no further ado, let us watch this amazing talk entitled "Gratitude Path." Excuse me, Path to Mindfulness and Better Living.
Good evening, everyone. So before I start, I just wanted to show my gratitude and say thank you to the TriState Spiritist Federation for organizing this event. So can we give them a round of applause? I would also like to take this opportunity to show my gratitude for all the behind-the-scenes workers, those that are making today flawless and possible, for everyone from the MC to those that are overseeing the food. I mean, there's so many things that go on behind the scenes, and if you've never organized such an event, you might not know about it, but there are a lot of moving parts behind the scenes. So just wanted to say thank you all. Can we have a round of applause for them as well? So I heard once that there are 2 to 3 stories in our lifetime that shape who we are. If you think for a second, what are those experiences or stories you've experienced in your life that help shape you? They're pretty impactful, right? If I give you about a minute or so, you could probably think, or maybe some of you might need some more time. I want to start out by sharing 2 stories that have helped shape who I am today. The first story was my first experience with gratitude. Now, I'm going to be talking about gratitude and mindfulness today. And ultimately, I hope that you take away that it is an experience. It's not a definition that you read in Webster's dictionary. It's not a movie that you watch. It is an experience that you have, and philosophy means movement. So with that being said, when I was 16 years old, we had a friend of ours from Brazil visiting us. And while he was staying with us for a little while, he wanted to do some sort of outreach program. So my mom was explaining to him at the time what were the options. So he didn't want to wait. He didn't want to have to go through bureaucracies, fill out paperwork. So he said, let's roam your neighborhood. So my mom grabbed me, because my other 3 siblings were not interested or had scattered. So I was chosen to go with her. So we went, the 3 of us, and we started driving. And this gentleman says, turn here. So we turned there. It was like I don't know if they have Rite Aids. They have Rite Aids in New Jersey, of course they do. So we turn into this Rite Aid parking lot. And he points to a man in a wheelchair that's in his wheelchair, sitting outside of Rite Aid. So we park the car, and we go over and we approach him, and my mom's translating. And the gentleman begins to tell the story of his life and just how he ended up living on the street. So behind this particular Rite Aid was like this wooded area, and sort of like it dipped down into like a little stream. It was a lot of bush and trees. You really couldn't see anything down there. And when my mom asked him, well, where do you live? And he pointed to the bushes and the trees and the wooded area. And so I got really scared, because then I hear the gentleman, my mom's friend, say, well, let's all go over there and see where you live. So we all walk over, and I see this makeshift bed. And to my horror, he says that, well, this is where I've been living for the past few years. And of course, we continue on a discussion about his life and things like that and ways in which we could help him. I went home that day deeply appreciative of my life. A 16-year-old. Prior to that moment, I had been reflecting about how it really wasn't, it sucked growing up poor. We didn't have nice things. My bed had springs in it, and when I slept, I could feel the springs in my back, and I was constantly having to turn it and put blankets over it, and I was complaining about this and that and all these things. And I went home that night. I've never been so thankful for that terrible bed in that old house, because I thought, I have a roof over my head, and I'm guaranteed to at least eat twice, maybe 3 times a day. But that gentleman was not, and that shook me to my core and has always stayed with me. That has helped shape my experience of what it means to feel gratitude. It was the first time I experienced, although I didn't know it at the time, I experienced mindfulness. I sat in my bed and I felt my bed for what felt like the first time. I looked around my room as if it were the first time. I looked at my cupboards full of food, and it was like it was the first time, seeing everything with new eyes. And that is, in part, what gratitude and mindfulness does for us. My second experience came much later in my life. Actually, it was last November, November 2016. And for three or 4 years, I watched my father slowly die from metastatic prostate cancer. And I watched him change a lot too. It was a very healing experience for me and for him, perhaps other people. Well, what was most interesting was not in that whole process of his death, although there was a lot to be learned. I felt like we all grew up. Was that he, Spiritist, you prepare and you prepare and you prepare and you prepare, because Joanna D'Angelo says in the book Happy Life, think about death every day. It's not morbid, she says. It's so we are prepared for the emotional reactions that we experience when we face it. And as a nurse, or that I'm insensitive to it, but you are accustomed to knowing that death is always a part of your profession. The day that I got the call and arrived at my parents' house, it was an experience I cannot impart to you unless you've had that experience, in which I'm just telling you, like a movie that you're watching, you're just watching what I'm showing you, and hopefully you can feel or get some sort of notion of the experience. I remember being acutely aware of that was the last time I would see his physical body, and that I wanted to be in the room in his, even though he had already passed by the time I got there, but I wanted just to be there, to physically hold his hand, to watch the undertaker prepare the body and everything and put him in the bag and all these things. I wanted to just be present. I wanted to remember every moment. Because I thought to myself, he was there for every moment, for every second when I came into the world. To there him was connecting. I've never felt than in that moment. Because those who have come before us and have paved a way for us, we have nothing but gratitude. We should have nothing but gratitude for them. And as much as our parents or our caretakers or our guardians may have messed up, and believe me, as a nurse, I've heard some of the most horrendous stories from patients of abuse. But the gospel teaches us that what? We still need to honor them. Don't have to agree with it, but find gratitude in it. These are 2 stories that helped shape my understanding, and I hope that you can begin to connect with stories in your life that will begin to, hopefully, if it hasn't already, maybe it'll start today for you, to begin to reflect more on gratitude. Now, it's kind of difficult sometimes. I think Peter touched a little bit on this, how difficult it is to be present, to experience mindfulness. Because how many of you have one of these in your home? It doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't have to be a curved TV. How many of you own a TV that's color? Put your hands up high. Okay, I'd say pretty much everybody. How many of you owns one of these in your home? Right. How many of you don't have to own this Apple fancy laptop, but how many at least own a computer? Okay, the vast majority. And one of these doesn't have to be an Apple. It's some sort of smartphone. We are so technologically advanced, but we're so the 14th Dalai Lama wrote this beautiful composition about peace in the world, and he said that science and technology have worked wonders in many fields, but the basic human problems remain. There is unprecedented literacy, yet this universal education does not seem to have fostered goodness, but only mental restlessness and discontent instead. We live in the most technologically advanced country, somewhat, give or take, on this planet. We are doing pretty well. Problems, deep emotional issues that surface. Why is that? Or how do we combat it? Because it's a complex question, therefore it has a complex answer, and I don't intend to try to fully address it, but to at least talk about mindfulness and gratitude as a prophylactic. How many of you take multivitamins daily? Fish oil, something of that sort, some magical concoction that your grandmother told you about, maybe it was EP or maybe your grandmother taught you something. We've all taken something to supplement ourselves. Gratitude and mindfulness are similar in that regard. So before we begin, I want to, because mindfulness and gratitude are an experience, I want us to experience something. But before I do that, I want to do a breathing exercise, but before I do that, I want you all to do me a favor. I want beside you, turn to the person beside you, look at them, okay? And I want you, one person at a time, say to the person next to you something that you are grateful for. It could be anything. I am grateful for. Okay. How does that feel? Wonderful. Anybody on the left side of the room, how does that feel? God bless you. How does that feel? It's good. Peter mentioned fluid. I'm talking about it. The more we practice something, talking about thoughts are things, the more we think about something, it has a physiological response in our body, and we create a habit. And the habits are very hard to change. That's why when people come to our Spiritist Center saying, I have this and that problem, and we fix within themselves, it's in part because habits are very difficult to break. But if we take this opportunity on a daily basis to start a gratitude journal, one thing I highly always recommend to people to do at least once in their life is to write a letter of gratitude. It can be to anybody. Spend some time writing. Don't make it too long because nobody wants to read like a 5-page letter. But pick somebody in your life. Spend some time, even if they're passed on, it doesn't matter, write them a gratitude letter. and begin to have that practice maybe once a year, maybe once a month, you will begin to notice a very huge center and with how you are reacting and interacting with other people. Let's take just 1 minute to do a quick breathing exercise. And as a side note, when I did this exercise recently, I noticed that they're in a different place, very far away. I noticed that some people were just not into it. And I get that this is not your practice, this is not our everyday practice. However, indulge me for this moment and for the sake of the TriState Spiritist Federation putting this beautiful program together. Just do it. As the MC had mentioned, don't pretend, be a part of it. And then you might actually be pleasantly surprised that, wow, that was an interesting thing. Let's all close our eyes. This breathing exercise is a mindful exercise meant for us just to pay attention to our breathing. What I want you to do is take a breath in and out. Take one more time, a deep breath in. If you felt your shoulders go up, then you're doing it wrong. I want you to fill your belly with air as you breathe in. So let your belly expand and then release. Make your stomach flat again. We're going to do it one more time. Breathe in. You can open your eyes. Studies have shown that in moments of stress, if we simply do a breathing exercises, there's a positive reaction in our body. We will calm down, regroup our thoughts, and perhaps begin again. In order for us to really understand the talk of today, I would like for us to, let's define it. And today was to use a if you are unfamiliar with her, she is the mentor, spirit guide of a great Brazilian medium in Brazil named Givaldo Franco. She writes, her series of books are, if you've ever read them, you will see that they are really based on a lot of psychology. If you ever studied psychology in college, you're going to see the likes of Jung, Erik Erikson, and like-minded people. So she has a really great perspective on gratitude. Knowing from the Latin gratis, meaning grateful, or gratia, meaning grace, Joanna defines sort of two different types of gratitude. A basic gratitude. The best way I can describe this to you as the following. Have you ever done something for somebody else and then got upset that they didn't say thank you? You don't have to raise your hand. Okay, people were brave. Okay, all right. You usually have to say you don't have to share because people are like, oh. That's good. That's a great sign for this group. It means that you're not afraid to be authentic and to be who you are. Congratulations. But in our beginning stages, because we have to go from A, B, C to D to reach Z, our beginning stages of our developing gratitude, we're going to feel that. But eventually, once we get to what Joanna might refer to as an evolved gratitude, it's much deeper. It's not limited to a casual reward mechanism where we do something just to get a thank you. And if you think hard enough in our lives, we've done it a few times in our lives. Joanna says it has a psychotherapeutic character to it. That's what we mentioned earlier on in our talk today. This experience that happens when we are truly experiencing gratitude. It's something deep, it's visceral, it connects us with something divine. And Joanna says that only when we are psychologically mature are we able to obtain this. She says all who are grateful truly understand the significance of real gratitude, enjoy physical, emotional, and psychological health, something that I think the vast majority of society is searching for. Mindfulness has existed since and the understanding and the true definition of it has always existed. Perhaps it's been not called that over the centuries, but the thought about it has always existed. But only now, if you've noticed in social media and things like that, it's very popular. It's extremely popular to see lots of people writing books about it. One person in particular, Jon Kabat-Zinn, has been involved in mindfulness since the 1970s. He was the founder of the Center of Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. He has been working with mindfulness for 30 years. Initially, he got involved with college students and trying to help them with mindfulness, but he has done extensive amounts of research and has an amazing definition of what mindfulness is. He also says that mindfulness is something much more simpler than what we think it is. It's moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness. So when you are breathing, and you can do more of these activities at home and you'll be able to experience this on a greater level, but when you were sitting and breathing and you're just breathing in and out, you're just experiencing the breathing. You weren't judging anything, you weren't thinking about anything, but the more you begin to practice mindfulness, you will begin to notice how much we label things. So today I had the pleasure of going to the Carvalho households momentarily, and I noticed something really interesting. And when we left the house with Ligia, their daughter Lillian was walking, and I watched children. Children can teach us so much about mindfulness. I watched her as she was walking down the steps. And she went and was looking down at the grass, and I was thinking, I wonder what she's like looking at. She picked a flower and came to her mother and said, "Mommy, I picked this flower for you." I mean, we might think, and let me tell you, we were trying to run and get here, and Ligia was doing like 1,001 things as mothers usually do, they multitask. But in that moment, we stopped, we looked at the flower, appreciated just appreciating that moment. It is an experience. I know that it was talked about a little bit earlier today about experiencing life in a non-judgmental way, and that is what mindfulness is. Moment-to-moment non-judgment and just experiencing things for what they are. Mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So when you get home from work and your partner or spouse or roommate comes in, and most of us are on our phone and they're our spouse or partner's talking, we're just going like this, right, yep, answering emails, yep, That's the opposite of what being mindfulness is. Stop doing that. Take a moment and just give that. Mindfulness is giving a thing 100%. Not judging it, just taking it in, experiencing it. Dr. Kabat-Zinn mentions mindfulness as a love affair with life. I love this term, a love affair. If you think about that word, what is a love affair? We won't go into detail, you all can imagine it. The passion you feel, the enchantment for life, or the enchantment for a person, especially in the first 6 months of dating. After a few years and you get married, a lot of that kind of just dwindles. But Joanna Deanne just actually says something so amazing. My contacts are messing up, sorry guys. So amazing. Saint Francis of Assisi. Do you guys know who he is? Okay. She refers to this Franciscan enchantment for life. Now, if anyone goes and Googles St. Francis, we know that some people might have made fun of him because he's always like talking to the animals and, always like, sort of like hippie-ish, like let's all be one, like all love, make love, not war type of, but more profound. Because you have to sit with that thought for a minute. Have you considered re-evaluating your life and the way in which you view it, and ask yourself or tell yourself, okay, I'm going to try to have more enchantment towards life. So when you get out of bed in the morning, anybody just holler out, what's the first thing when you wake up in the morning? Does everyone wake up in the morning giving thanks? Yes. 2 people. It's okay. Well, what are some of the things you do first thing in the morning? Who said kiss their wife?
They're still in the 6 months.
Oh, I was going to say, you've been married just for a few years, right? That's amazing. You are enchanted, giving blessings, giving gratitude. But okay, so most of us get up, and how many people look at their phone? Thank you for being honest. Someone's calling the person out.
Usually the phone was.
Yeah, usually the phone wakes. For most of us, I think the phone is the alarm, and that's the truth of the matter is, for most of us, I think, at least the millennials or the millennial-ish people, or whatever, most of us use our phone. I was at a meeting recently with a orthotics and prosthetic company that we were trying to work with. And they brought in a gentleman who had lost his leg to a horrible accident, kind of like a movie scene. His foot got stuck on a railroad track, and he was drunk, and all his friends were drunk, and everything happened so fast, and he lost his leg. So I was observing him getting up from his chair and walking with his prosthetic leg. And then he began talking, telling his story, and I began thinking I was asking myself a question like, how often do I get up and say, thank you, God, my legs, I have 2 that work. I mean, thank God we have modern technology that have, prosthetic. How many of can really thank God. But truly and honestly, to get to a point of mindfulness, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, and this is something if you want to pull out your smartphones, you're going to want to take a picture of this list. These are 9 attitudinal foundation of mindfulness. So basically what he says that there are 9 attitudes that we need to adopt even before we start to become more mindful. For those of you who have already begun to work on mindfulness, you will relate to some of this. I know that on a personal note I have, one of which in particular was acceptance and letting go. When you start to practice mindfulness, and what happens, you begin to become more self-aware, and you begin to realize a lot of feelings that you have about things and people that you didn't know were there before. Did I move too fast? Some of you might want to take a picture, sorry. These are non-judging, meaning experiencing things as they are and not judging them. Patience. Beginner's mind means that looking at something as maybe perhaps a child would, fresh with new eyes. Trust, non-striving. Non-striving doesn't mean that it's wrong, like Peter had shared. It's not wrong to want to go to college, get a good job, but it means that you're not allowing that to define you. Acceptance, letting go, generosity, and ultimately gratitude is an attitude we need to adopt in order to further deepen our mindfulness. We know already in science that mindfulness has already proven itself to be something positive, something good. Harvard has done many studies. I'm just bringing 2 actually here. One, the study that showed participants who completed an 8-week mindfulness meditation basically had a reduced activity in the right amygdala in the response to emotional images, even when not meditating. Basically what this means is that normally when you were driving on the highway and you look over and you see there was a horrific crash, your body has a response in your brain, okay? And it's like a stress response because you're like, oh gosh, that's terrible if that's your response. But what they found were people who practice mindfulness, they have less of that stress response. So that response and the conclusion is open for interpretation. For most people, they believe that because mindfulness is something positive. And also that mindfulness actually helps with memory. So as we age, memory is an issue. I know a lot of people like to take ginkgo biloba. A all this other kind of stuff. Actually, if you practice mindfulness, it is proven to have a good positive effect on your memory. So another added benefit amongst many other things that meditation and mindfulness can help us with, and these are all proven things. I didn't want to spend time going through a whole lot of research because we just know that it works. We're just not fully utilizing it to its greatest capacity yet. We know that it reduces stress. We know that it helps control our thoughts and helps reverse heart disease, etc., etc. Someone in the field of gratitude, since we're talking about science and research, this is one of the research that are he has been at the forefront of research on gratitude for, I don't know how many decades it's been now. His name is Dr. Robert Emmons, and he continuously is updating his work and his research. But what he has found is that children who practice grateful thinking have more positive attitudes towards school and their families. This is so significant because we live in an era where bullying is happening a lot. Families are being torn apart with kids that are committing suicide at a young age for various reasons. It would benefit us tremendously if we begin to practice gratitude and mindfulness in our own homes and model that for our children. He also found that those who kept gratitude journals on a weekly basis, exercised more regularly, reported fewer physical symptoms, felt better, and the list goes on and on and on. You could probably say, well, exercising is going to make you feel better anyway. It does, but on a mental, emotional level as well, gratitude does help. People are more likely to report having helped someone with a personal problem or having offered emotional support to somebody else because we can recognize, we can empathize with others. And mindfulness, ultimately, it makes us self-aware. We know that in the Spirit's book, question 919, they tell us this. Self-knowledge is, therefore, the key to individual improvement, and that we should know ourselves. The more you become mindful, you will, I guarantee you, begin to notice things about yourself that you had not before. But the purpose is to be non-judgmentally. Joanna DeAndres really warns us about self-judgment, that humanity has a tendency to judge themselves and others very harshly. We need to adopt the idea of self-care into our daily practice. I can't tell you how many people give excuses every time we say to them, how much time do you spend on you daily? I'm not talking about being selfish, telling your spouse I'm talking about just caring for yourself. Most of the time, we do this when we get sick. Then we say, I should have done this more or that more. Should have spent more time doing this or that. I see many families come through our Spiritist Center with children who have a lot of problems. And one many years ago came to us and said, I should have taught my children this or that. I should have done this or that. I should have spent more time on caring about my spirituality because then I would have cared more about my children's. But it's never too late, ever, to begin again. That's the one positive thing. But this is a huge takeaway. In college, when a professor says this is a huge takeaway, it means it's going to be on the test. This is a huge takeaway. Know thyself. My own personal theory as to why 50% of marriage and I believe Joanna talked about it as well, that a lot of us don't know who we are. And we get into relationships and then we discover who we are and then we look at our partner and like, yeah, you weren't the right one for me. This happens. Other people just tend to give up on things because longevity is just not a thing for them, neither is monogamy for that reason, but that's a whole other lecture for a different day. Get to know who you are. Something as simple as practicing mindfulness. Joanna talks about expressing gratitude, which incidentally enough really coincides really well with mindfulness, because when you're expressing gratitude, you're giving your complete attention to that thing, that person, that experience, whatever it is, through love. And she says that only a psychologically mature human being experiences this. So that means When you look at your friend, partner, spouse, colleague, and you're like, oh, they're not grateful, they don't appreciate things in their lives, or you look at your spouse, oh, he or she doesn't appreciate me. You can't force someone to be at a level that you're at or your understanding. It just doesn't work that way. I gave this example recently that Joanna actually gives in the book Existential Conflicts. It's in English. And she says that, and I'm paraphrasing, how many of you have cats or dogs? At least 50%. Good. You really appreciate this analogy. I've given this before, so sorry, Julio. How many of you have ever looked at your cat or dog when you came home from work? How many of you have ever looked at your cat or dog and waited for them to sit with you at the dining room table and have a full-on conversation about your day? I've usually have at least one person in the audience that always says that they do. So nobody in this audience does. Okay. Yeah, maybe. Okay. All right. If we cannot expect a cat or a dog that's in a completely different world than us, in the same respect, we cannot and should not look at a partner of ours or a friend, family member, and expect them to have the understanding that we do, because that's just not their level. That's where letting go comes into play. And letting go is a mindfulness mantra that you have to sort of brainwash yourself into feeling, understanding, and going through. And you got to keep reminding yourself, because when you go into therapy, that's in essence, in a way, what your therapist is telling you. Look at it differently. Think about this. They're indoctrinating you in a positive sense. Joanna goes on to say that once we become psychologically mature, we become woke, or in other terms, our consciousness awakens. We come to this transcendental reality because we are destined for happiness. That is the end result for everybody. It's something that we always recommend people to remind themselves. Whatever you're going through, you should put a little like a sticky note somewhere where you would look at every day, like your mirror or your car, and remind yourself, I am destined for happiness. This too shall pass. Because everything passes in the end. And when we experience love and gratitude, our cerebral cortex, which is part of our brain, promotes an organic feeling of well-being that amplifies the possibilities for development of the self, which leads to health. In other words, it facilitates our happiness when we express love. Science has already proven this. This is not like something that's unproven. We already know that this is true, and it happens. And in the book, Life and Destiny, which, by the way, if any of you are curious to get it, SGNY has it on their website. It's a free PDF. It's by Leon Denis. Fantastic, fantastic book. If you haven't read it, you should. In the book, Leon Denis mentions something. He says, material preoccupations create horizontal currents of vibrations, which are obstacles to the etheric radiations and restrict our perceptions. When we only think about material things, our thoughts are here, horizontal. Our wavelengths are here. But on the contrary, when we begin to meditate on higher ideals of life, he uses this word, divine effluvia. It's something very interesting. We connect with this divine current. And what I really liked is the cross, because that kind of symbolizes this statement. You have your horizontal and you have your vertical connection. Part of the cross is so significant because our connection to God is so significant. In mindfulness and gratitude practice, two of the first things, if I can call them things, that we need to be grateful for in order for our practice to be truly successful is A, God, and B, our parents. If you have any issues with any of that triangle of three, you're always going to come back and have issues. Those are the source of life for us. And gratitude is something we should express and experience. In the book Action and Reaction, they talk about this idea of rehabilitating our thoughts. I thought how interesting that is. Because that's in essence what we need to do, is we need to have a rehabilitation of our thoughts, sort of a thought transfusion, blood transfusion, but or more so not transfusion, kind of like a transfusion, and sort of a dialysis, if you will, of our thoughts, a cleaning up of our thoughts. In the book, Ilario says, charity and worthwhile learning, faith and goodwill, optimism and work, art and constructive meditation are renewing themes whose merit we must not neglect in the rehabilitation of our ideas and consequently our destinies. They talk a lot about this rehabilitation of thoughts and ideas in this book. This tells us that Spiritism recognizes how important a healthy thought life is and how that directly impacts our health, our well-being, our path to happiness, our path to joy, love. It's something for us to really take seriously. When you go into the doctor's office, have any of you ever gone to your doctor's office, your doctor said, well, you need to change this in your diet. And then you left, and he says, I want to see you in 6 months. And 6 months comes, and you're like, oh man, I never changed it. And so a few days prior, you stopped eating that thing you weren't supposed to be eating, and you hurry to run the treadmill. Don't do that with your spiritual life. We are valuable. You matter. You have purpose. And this life, as my father told me a week before he died, as I was holding his hand in his hospital bed that we had in my parents' house for him, and he would say this to me so many times. I think he was just really trying to impress upon me. He said, Kirsten, 76 years have gone by in my life. 76, 75, 76. So fast, he kept saying to me and my siblings, it went by so fast. Before you know it, you're going to be gone and back and reflecting. 2 take-home pictures I would like for you to take a picture of. I'm asking you to whip out your cell phone. If you have a smartphone, take a picture of this. I am okaying it. Staff in the back, Julia has okayed it. 2 things. 1, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, many people do not read this very fine print. On the first page, it's in small print, and it talks about the application of this knowledge in our lives. If we do nothing with the knowledge, it's like a beautiful Monet or Picasso you hang on your spiritual wall. It's beautiful that it's there, but it does nothing. It does nothing for you, does nothing for the world, does nothing for any parts of society. Doing is a huge part of philosophy we need to put in practice. And this is 2 things I want to leave you guys with. A mindful snack. So we already know that in Spiritism, whatever kind of negative thoughts we have, we connect with negative minds. So let's avoid that. We say prayer is fantastic, utilize prayer. And this mindful snack is sort of like a prayer. It's an acronym, SNACK. You're stopping. I can't even read it because, okay. Yes, just stop whatever you are doing in that moment. When you are experiencing stress, stop. Notice what's happening within you and around you, non-judgmentally. Accept, and this is the most tricky part that for those of us who have experienced mindfulness will attest to this. Acceptance, whatever it is that you're struggling with, accept it. In the gospel, it talks about resignation and obedience. The gospel according to Spiritism, this is a part of that. Accepting what you're experiencing in that moment and asking yourself, what can I learn from this? Curious. Ground yourself with questions about your experience and environment. What am I feeling? What do I need right now? And kindness. Respond to yourself and others with kindness. The other little slide are 9 things to work on as you transition into mindfulness, because sometimes in the beginning, and I've talked to other people who in the beginning stages of mindfulness, that some of these things are very hard, especially when you're going through something painful or difficult. And a lot of us that come to Spiritist centers or churches, at least 50%, that's my research, are coming because they're suffering. They're going through a hard time. They're going through a trial, a tribulation, a struggle. So begin to think about these thoughts. And of course, always, gratitude. If nothing else, you walk away from this talk today, practice more gratitude. Whether it's writing a letter, waking up every day, and acknowledging to yourself all the things that you are grateful for. And I am grateful for all of you here this evening, and for the TriState Spiritist Federation, for the United States Spiritist Federation, for all the federations that went into putting this program together. We can't even begin to imagine how this is impacting us as individuals, but also as society. So I give you great thanks so much. Thank you.
Give me 1 second, folks, and we would like to, we don't have anything online, any questions or comments perhaps yet, but I know we're few here too, but would like to spend some time and give you the ability to ask a question or a comment perhaps that you may have about what Kirsten brought to us so well, right? Connecting, I would say the capability of being in the moment, right? The idea of mindfulness, right? The idea of connecting with ourselves through um, again analyzing through prayer perhaps or whatnot, but meditation, that's the word that I would like to say as well, and then get to the stage of gratitude, right? Like anything in our lives, one thing that I would like to say is that in order for us to get to it, we have to acknowledge whether it's something bad or something good. We have to acknowledge, right? We have to get to it. We have to at least wish to see it, right? And gratitude is the same thing. We have to get to that moment. We have to, and I think she connected so well with the idea of mindfulness and also meditation, because it is during those moments that we will um, finally get that aha moment and say, "Wow, this is amazing," right? And I don't think that if she was mindful enough or meditative enough, right? The two cases that she brought at the beginning, she wouldn't have, let's say, accepted or worked on or even accepted the first case with the person who was homeless, right? And say, wow, wait a minute. Well, she had the encounter with that issue, but for some of us, that's like, okay, a person lives on the street. But then she had the moment of realization and saying, wait a minute, this is something important because that person does not have um, a bed to sleep. I have a bed that has a couple springs coming up, right? Or not coming up, that makes the hole the bed. But I have something. That's a moment of realization. That's a mindful, that's a moment of mindfulness that we can all share collectively, that we also go through, at one point of our lives. And then the second one, the difficult moment with her father as well. So, because I'm not saying I'm not making it less or any more, I'm quite sure one thing, as hard as it was for her, it was probably hard as well for her siblings. But the passing of her father had a different impact on her siblings as well. I'm just using these examples because, I want the point I would like to make is the idea of the mindfulness, right? So thank you for that, Kirsten, and thank you for sharing those moments as well. But um, Paula actually comes to us and she's asking, what specific resources do you suggest for people to learn mindfulness and meditation? Hmm. I will pass the word to Kirsten too, because since she studied, she probably have a better answer. But what I would say, Paula, is the necessity of acceptance. And I say acceptance, let me explain it. I briefly mentioned already, but it's the idea of, acknowledging that either there is a problem or acknowledging that there is a something to be, grateful, right? Um, and I think that when we sometimes, it's a glimpse, right, that it comes to our mind, that we can then take the moment to be mindful and say, I need to explore this. I need to uh, meditate on this, right? So that's number one. That's one resource. This connectivity sometimes that it's sometimes very fast, or it's just a glimpse, and we doubt. Sometimes we're driving and we remember something. So whenever we have these things, whenever we have a thought that perhaps we ask ourselves, why am I thinking about this? Well, explore. Stop and explore. That's an indication that you have to go into that. It's not for us to suffer. It's not for us to. So I'm talking about alerts, right? As far as resources, Joanna de Angelis is a great um, author in terms of connecting spiritism with this mindfulness and meditation, but other books as well. Andrea Luiz's books as well. I think that the books of Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, whenever we see these minds and hearts exploring certain parts or elements of our lives in such a detail, we know that they're being mindfulness. We know that they're being meditative about it as well. It's much like, you read a chapter, right? And you go through that chapter so fast, and okay, great. This chapter talks about, the sky is blue. But do we ever stop to digest the first paragraph, the second paragraph, in such a way that we find new things every time we go and read it? It's very hard for us to do that. And I think it's the same thing in life. Stop, breathe. That's why she did the breathing exercise. So that's also another resource, right? That's why, she explores the ideas of what we do when we get up in the morning, right? That's a step to get into this blissfulness of mindfulness, right? So we have examples, several examples, but I hope that helps. Is to truly be in the moment. Question the things that we're doing every day. Question the fact that sometimes we are on the phones. Question the fact that sometimes we are just working, working, working. Question the fact that sometimes we are driving from point A to point B and we don't see anything. Are we mindful? Sometimes, yeah, we get into that autopilot mode, right? And we just see life passing by. And we often see this at work. I even say it myself. It's already August, right? Yeah, it's already August. What happened to the rest of the 7 months that already passed of this year, right? It comes so fast, right? Because we're so busy. We're being attacked about with a million things, and we forget to contemplate the time that we have in our hands, right? And it's a good thing that we're busy, but do we find time for ourselves, as Kirsten once more, mentioned as well? Another resource, right? So there are many. There are many things. Not everything works for me as it would work for Chris, for Kirsten, Daniel, right? Um, there are many things. The thing is, what works for us? What is actually important in a moment as well? Some people say connecting with nature is a good thing, but not everybody likes the heat. So Miss Maria here would be like, no, I'm not going outside, right? Um, but some people like to connect with nature in a different way, right? And through their pets, right? That's a moment as well of being mindful, because as Kirsten also mentioned, children reminds us, of being mindful all the time, because little things in life really have a different meaning for them more than it have for us, right? Because we're so busy. And sometimes, connecting with our pets as well is the same thing. The joy of a dog, when they see you, right? Like they never saw you before, they haven't seen you for ages, but it was only a couple hours, right? Connecting with uh, uh, our cats, right? When they also give that look at us when we get to the house, but we know that they noticed they were there, right? And they're happy as well to see us in their own ways, right? So again, many many ways. I think I said a couple here, and we hope that perhaps you can also share. One thing that I didn't say is that this talk is also on YouTube. If you would like to Google for the look for the by the through the title, you'll be able to find it as well, and you can actually make your comments there. I'm quite sure that Kirsten will be happy to see more comments on it as well. Um, Paula also says, oh, so again, I hope this helped, Paula, and thank you for the question. And she says, yes, on acceptance and shifting to observer mode, like our guardian angel who is always watching us very well. And sometimes, right, this is the moment that we have to connect with our guardian angel, right? I shouldn't say sometimes. That's actually, those are the moments that, those are when we have those glimpses, right? When there's the shifting ideas, it's our guardian angel say, hey, wake up, Leo. There's something beyond this, right? That we can go for it. So great question and great comment. Thank you. Anyone else? And I'll share with anybody here. No? Okay. So Rosalda saying, great reminder. Thank you, Kirsten. Yes, thank you. And, we, once more, if you would like to play this or send this to a friend, someone who is in need of this reminder, right, of gratitude, or if anything, we don't even have to share as gratitude, because we know that ultimate idea is through mindfulness, right? And meditation is for the person to get into this idea of gratitude, right? um, but we could just say, like, you know what, why don't you slow down, watch this talk, or listen to at least, right? I know there are certain things that I took note as well that you brought there, the snack and the the other areas that she mentioned. I'll pull it up real quick here, just for a highlight right here. To be non-judging, to have patience, to have a beginner's mind, to trust, non-striving, acceptance, letting it go, generosity and gratitude. Right, are ways for us to get to this beautiful idea or state of mind of gratitude. Um, and my final highlight that I would like to give to everyone here, so we can say our final prayer, that is really interesting that Kirsten said. There is something that, and this is not only said by our Master Jesus, um, but in other parts of the Bible as well, very well emphasized by Jesus, which is to really think our think by honoring our father and mother, right? Our parents. It's just an amazing reminder that she brings to us, because if we cannot, the hardest it is for some of us, right, to do such a thing. If we cannot be grateful for what we have for our parents, it's really hard to be grateful for God, right? And I always, and this is Leo saying, this is Leo analyzing this point, because there are certain things that I don't, as much as I honor my parents, I don't think they're perfect. They're not, and I think that this is actually the point that we see, that we make them even bigger in our hearts, right? Because of their failures, because of they continue to show their persistence towards us, their consideration towards us, and they did their best, right? So, on that note, showing that gratitude, it's not that we're going to accept everything they say, to acknowledge everything they're saying by saying, okay, I agree with this. No, it's not that. It's just that everything that we do in life should be as to honor them, right? Our actions, we're not telling anybody to be perfect because we're not. I'm not. But our action ought to be in a position to say, I'm doing this in a way to honor what I have received from my parents. Thus, by doing so, we're honoring God as well. It's very hard for us to get to cross this bridge, right? That is our parents between us, right, and God. So I think that is an amazing reminder that once we start to do that little by little, because sometimes we need help, we need reminders, we need the ability to go beyond their failure as much as we go beyond ours, because sometimes we look at them and we try to mirror our failures on them, right? Because we think that because sometimes the mother sees on us certain things that we do just like our father, and they say, oh, this is just like your father, or vice versa, right? And sometimes that can be something that unconsciously we have inside of us, and we don't acknowledge the other side, right, as much as we should. Yeah, I look, speak quite a bit like my father. Some friends, family members say, you're just like your mother. Great, yes. Hey, guess what? She raised me, right? So, it's just a funny thing that sometimes we hear. Um, Sometimes we try to hide it. Sometimes we try to push away because there are certain things that certain ways that we may even not like it, but we're still doing it. Uh, but let us be grateful. Let us be grateful for what we have had. And I think this will be a nice way for us to connect with our mentors, as Paula reminded us here, and connected with God as well in a higher level. So, thank you again, Kirsten. Thank you, everyone, for connecting with us and watching this, talking with us. Like I said, it's always possible for us to also stream again, watch it over again if we miss anything. Um, and I challenge everyone to watch it and surely go to the comments on the video and share your ideas, what you got out of it, what has worked with you in relation to some of the things that she has said. So at this point, let us just then say our final prayer, giving thanks to our dear Creator. You may find yourself again in a comfortable position. Continue to be attentive and positive about what we have heard. Sometimes some of the things that we are reminded of or we see for the first time can shake up our hearts and our minds in such a way that it's hard to slow down. We get excited, we have new ideas, our new aspirations. This is a moment for us to slow down a little bit. As Kirsten have reminded us, let us breathe in and out in a different way, much slower than before, and thank our dear Creator for this opportunity that we had to connect with a higher note, a higher message, a higher endeavor than ourselves, which is to change on how we see life, to be mindful, to meditate about ourselves, to take care of ourselves. Wishing that this message travels in different ways, electronically, through the airways of the universal cosmic fluid, to help others, to help them connect in different ways, and to be mindful, to be aware of themselves. To understand that, as we have said at the beginning in our opening prayer, that we're millenary spirits, eternal spirits, as Kirsten also reminded us, destined to be happy. We are very enclosed in our own physical life right now in this physical body, but we can always remind ourselves, personally, in a collective way as well, that everything shall pass and we will all evolve towards happiness. A very active happiness where we will work for one another in a much higher level than we are working right now, as we conquer our difficulties and we exalt what we have accomplished thus far. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you for these teachings, for one another, for who we are, for what we have, what we will be, and what we will have in the future. And so be it.